a lot of things happen to women at that age. They typically, physically go through menopause. Emotionally, they're probably becoming empty nesters or, will soon.
Everybody else is on full speed on the track and you're just entering.
It's so important as we get older that we do have those social interactions, that we are engaged with, people. And I think, making new friends and doing new things, you can't be afraid of it and you have to try it. You got to download the ChatGPT app and start playing around with it.
Hi, I'm Jim McCann, founder of 1-800-Flowers. We created this podcast to share the wonderful people we get to interact with, we get to meet, we get to know, and most importantly, get to learn from. So I invite you to join us on this journey here on the Celebrations Chatter podcast. Well, we have a very interesting guest today. Susan Feldman's a serial entrepreneur, and I think she's up to something very interesting now. How are you today, Susan?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Susan, tell us someone who's had lots of ideas. You've had a distinguished
I hope it's not extinguished
career, and but I really like your newest idea. How did this idea come to you?
So I started getting the groove. Actually, it's 6 years this month, 6 years ago. After I had sold my first company, One Kings Lane. I'm a late bloomer entrepreneur. I started that company, One Kings Lane, at 53. So I was in my early 60s and I wasn't quite ready to hang it up, and started reconnecting with friends and colleagues who I hadn't had a lot of time to see while I was doing One Kings Lane. And it was kind of crazy with all the women that I was connecting with. The word invisible kept coming up. It didn't matter what we were talking about. It didn't matter who it was. It could have been a CEO of a company or a stay-at-home mom. The word invisible just kept coming up. And I started wondering, who was speaking to me and my friends digitally, and, where were people going to get their information and hang out? And at the time, 6 years ago, there really wasn't a lot out there. There was kind of AARP, which is, this amazing organization, but really wasn't speaking to me. And I felt, my friends. And then there was sort of on the other end of the spectrum, a pretty fragmented world of influencers, but not even that big of a world. And that was kind of it. There just wasn't anyone who I thought was really shining a light on women over 50 and talking about how great we are and what we were doing. Actually, it was sort of the contrary. The media world kind of portraying women over their 50s as, sitting in a bathtub in a Viagra commercial, looking out into the sunset. Either that or we looked like we were 105. I mean, that was kind of the world.
But if you just, as I think about, of course, over my long lifetime, how people of, let's say, 60s, people in their 60s and 70s, how they've been depicted. First of all, they weren't in ads of any kind when I was a kid. And then finally, when they were in ads, now you see them physically active.
Right.
And of course, if you watch the evening news, which every once in a while I still like to do before I leave the office, you wonder, geez, shouldn't I be on some of these drugs? Because look how happy all these people are. But the view of older people has changed dramatically, and yet in so many ways not very effectively. Because
exactly.
If you watch the evening news, you think we have many, many different diseases and one little pill or one little injection, and you're dancing, you're singing, the world is happy again. But you don't see women of a certain age in business leadership roles in media.
What happened was I just felt like I needed to create something that would, be a go-to place for women in this demographic. And really it's turned into be more about fashion and beauty, because that's kind of, what I was into and what my audience was responding to. And, we try to really just show aging in a really positive way, and help people be informed. Because one of the other things that was kind of interesting that I discovered is that using 50 as sort of an arbitrary number. A lot of things happen to women at that age. They typically, physically go through menopause. Emotionally, they're probably becoming empty nesters or, will soon. If they're professionals, they're probably at risk of getting aged out of their job. I mean, it's just really kind of a perfect storm of a lot of things. And so there's this moment in time, I think, where you sort of are a little out of touch with what's going on. Our world is changing so quickly that if you don't pay attention for a little bit of time and then you sort of come out of your whatever, you're sort of like, wow, what's going on?
Everybody else is on full speed on the track and you're just entering.
Exactly. So hopefully we're providing some good information, for might be technology, it maybe is fashion, how to take care of your skin, because really at this point in your life, you really have to change a lot of things. Also, you have to change, how you take care of yourself, how you dress. I mean, just there's a big change taking place. So hopefully we can help people through all of that.
So what's the business model of In the Groove? Do you sell products? You talked about the different kinds of content you have there. Do you take advantage of social media influencers? Are they contributing to your content?
I mean, I guess we are really a social media influencer. We have about 260,000 followers on Instagram. The business model is affiliate-based sales. So, I'm constantly pulling merchandise. It's my edit on whatever we're talking about at the time. We just talked about suede as a new fabrication for fall. It might be, a story about boots, something. So whatever is happening there, we're driving people to different websites. And then we do a lot of partnerships with people as well. So, and I'm pretty particular about that because I really do believe that I want our audience to know that what I'm picking is what I really believe in, what I like. And so the people that we work with are, always people that I like what they're doing.
You've always been selling your personal aesthetic in all the different industry roles you have. People are relying on you, defaulting to you for your judgment about style, about quality, about value. And now you're just taking that to a much broader scope, going beyond product.
Exactly.
Tell us what's happened to One Kings Lane. I know you had a very successful sale of the company to Bed Bath & Beyond. Then Bed Bath & Beyond had its troubles. Did they sell One Kings Lane before they went under?
Yeah, they did. It was funny. But the minute they started having activist activity, I said to my husband, I go, I think we will see a sale of One Kings Lane. Because they had bought, I don't know, about 10 different companies, One Kings Lane being one of them. And I think when
we bought one of their companies, we bought
that's right.
Personalization Mall.
Yeah, that was a great business. Anyway, so I just think, when you have trouble like that, you need to double down on your core business. So I wasn't surprised to see that, they sold off all those businesses. And it was purchased by a private equity group. And that is actually put together kind of a consortium of home businesses, and looks, I'm not involved at all, but I follow what they're doing. It looks good. And it looks like they're having good success, continued.
Oh, good. That's good to hear.
Yeah, it is good to hear.
And when did you start One Kings Lane?
So we actually launched the business in March 2009 in the height of the recession. So it was kind of an interesting time to start a new business. But, I do think that during tough times, there's always great business opportunities.
Indeed.
When we started the business, it was a flash sales site. So, it was limited sales for a limited amount of time. And we had a great opportunity to get some really, great product to put up there, which helped us really launch the business.
I'm always interested in how somebody grew up and how that's impacted their life choices and the businesses they go into, where they choose to live longer term, how they pursue their education. I understand that during your youth years, you moved a lot.
A lot.
How is it that you came to move so much?
Well, actually, my dad was a retailer. He started in the Macy's training program in New York, and it was actually a very different kind of program back then. I mean, it was that's a whole other story, but it was kind of only hired Ivy League, which my father was not. So he apparently, as the story goes, talked to the HR person about Greek mythology, and that was sealed the deal. So anyway, he got into the Macy's training
So
program.
that's on In the Groove under tips of what to say in an interview. Got it.
Yeah, make sure you know your Greek mythology. Anyway, so he was working his way up, the corporate ladder. And back in those days, there were many more opportunities, many more department stores. It just was a lot of different, very
The whole
different.
world circled around department stores then.
Yeah, and also, they weren't all consolidated into being, basically Macy's and Dillard's or, whatever. So he was able to, sort of move up the corporate ladder by going from Macy's to, May Company was a big one. We lived in St. Louis for a long time. Gimbals, lived to Pittsburgh. So anyway, he was working his way up the corporate ladder. But as
and
a
each
funny
job
story,
change was a move.
exactly. So my sister said every time he'd come home in the afternoon, she knew that was, bad news. We moved about 8 times. I went to 3 different high schools.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. But the funny thing is he ended up after all this at Macy's San Francisco running the stores. He was in charge of stores. So he really did like a complete full circle.
And isn't it amazing, Susan, that Macy's in Union Square is closed?
I know, that is crazy. That is
Wow.
really,
I mean, that was like the shopping mecca of the West Coast.
it was a great story. Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Anyway, so he was a great role model because after that, he also wasn't really ready to hang it up at 65, and they had, I don't know, it wasn't mandatory retirement, but he was out of there at 65. But he took his knowledge of all the shopping centers that he had from being in charge of the stores and went into commercial real estate and became super successful. It was always, every year, as my dad, I worked for Coldwell Banker, it was my dad and like 4 25-year-old kids, as the top, brokers of the year. But then that wasn't enough. He decided he loved art. He had been kind of a weekend warrior painter. And so at 78, he went back to California College of Arts and got his MFA and
At
graduated
78.
at 80. Yeah.
I love that story.
Yep. And he painted for the last 8 years of his life. He had, I think, 4 or 5 shows, sold his works. And as a true retailer, it was really about how many paintings he could sell. Mm-hmm. And when he figured out, people like flowers, so he started painting a lot more flowers. He was really pretty funny about it. But so he was great inspiration that,
I would think so.
Keep learning and keep, doing new things throughout your life. And I think one of the things that I really learned from him, besides, this remarkable career and all the different things he did, is that he took what he was good at and he really just iterated on it. It wasn't like he went and, tried to do something completely different, but these were things that he enjoyed and he was actually good at, and then, sort of took him to a whole new level, which I think was a great lesson.
I want to see a picture of him in his graduation from his with his MFA degree, to see him lined up with all the other students and see if I could pick him out.
He was actually kind of the class mascot. They loved him.
I bet.
Yeah, he was great. I think he's still to this day is the oldest graduate from the program. It's a great art program, but I think he still is the oldest graduate. And he was really, he was something else.
Sounds like a Renaissance man.
Yeah, he really was. He was incredibly well read. He never stopped reading. He always had 6 books by his bed that he was, reading at the same time. Really, really had a thirst for learning.
What kinds of things did you do before One Kings Lane?
Well, I got the retail gene for sure. So after I graduated from college, I worked at Bullock's, which is a department store, which no longer exists, part of Federated Department Store. And it was funny. I did very well there. I, became a buyer very quickly. I was the youngest buyer. But then I thought to myself, gosh, maybe I'm supposed to be an investment banker and I don't even know it because I've never been exposed to it. So I went back, got my MBA at UCLA. But was pulled right back into the retail thing and ended up at Macy's in New York when I graduated. So I worked pretty much in the retail, and then I went to the wholesale side. So I worked in the fashion business for the next 20 some years before I started One Kings Lane.
Now, I was looking up in my Freud dictionary, of trying to determine what made one thing happen. And the fact that you moved 8 times as a kid, 3 different high schools, the only constant was probably your furniture, because you changed houses, but you probably shipped your furniture.
We
It
did.
did not have anything to do with your interest in moving from fashion to furniture.
Maybe
Come on, help me here. I'm trying to be Freudian.
maybe subconsciously it did. I think actually the way I would tell you is that, so we moved from New York, almost 20 years ago to Los Angeles. And we lived in a great apartment. We actually had just renovated. It was a second marriage, and we bought the apartment next door to my apartment, did a big gut renovation. It was actually written up in the New York Times, and 2 weeks later, my husband got an amazing job opportunity in Los Angeles. And this is, by the way, if you want to talk Freudian, I had lived in this apartment even before the renovation for 18 years. So there definitely was something that happened that I'm sure we can
I'm
find.
staying put.
I'm nailing my feet down and it was true for the company. I mean, you don't see this today, but I literally was with the same company, even though they were bought and sold for 18 years as well. So anyway, but we moved to Los Angeles and we bought a house, and I realized it's really the first time since I graduated from high school that I had lived in a house, and I kind of went crazy. I was very excited to decorate this house, to entertain, to do all the things that were a little more challenging in Manhattan.
Yes.
And, it was really the beginning of e-commerce was really starting to take off, but I wasn't finding online the kind of things that I was looking for that I wanted to decorate my home. Down the street, there's some amazing home stores near us, but I'd have to get in my car and drive over there. It was busy, family, kids, all that stuff. And I wanted to go online and find these things. And I also wanted a deal. Mm-hmm. So, but there just was really, nothing. I was like scouring the internet. You really couldn't find unique product for the home. I mean, the big box stores were clearly there, but, I didn't want my house to look like everybody else's house. And so that was really the impetus for, this idea. And it took me a year. I thought about it for a year. I had marinated on this idea for a year, kept doing research, trying to see if I still liked the idea, because I'd had many ideas before this, and usually I, sort of decided not to do them. But this one was stuck with me for a year. And finally, in 2008, the end of 2008, the height of the recession, thought, this is a good idea. I'm going to start a business.
Listening to your story, listening to the story about your dad, I'm reminded of a lady I got to meet in the last year, and I've become a quick fan of hers. Her name is Cynthia Covey Haller. So Stephen Covey, who wrote the book, The 7 Habits of Effective People, Cynthia is the oldest of his 9 children and was working on this project with her dad before he passed. And she decided to finish the work, and she wrote a book that you are the epitome of, as well as your dad, which is living life in crescendo.
Yeah,
she said,
I love that.
You can live life in diminuendo, da, 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 da,
yeah.
or you can live life in crescendo, boom. And your dad epitomizes that, because at 78, going back to get his MFA, he said, look, I'm physically capable, I'm mentally capable, I'm interested, I'm curious, I want to do other things, and I'm not going to let age be a deterrent or predictor of how I'm going to behave.
Exactly.
And it seems to me that your community that is followed you onto In the Groove is people who want similar kinds of inspiration.
Yeah, I think so. I think people, there's something really powerful when you get together and you actually start talking about it, instead of trying to figure it out on your own. And by the way, our generation, really the first generation, sort of experiencing a lot of these things. My dad was pretty unique, I think, for his generation. I feel like my generation is really on the forefront of trying to figure out this aging thing and how, we continue and learn and do new things and all of this and feel good, right?
But you must come across people every day in the work you're doing on In the Groove, particularly women who amaze you, who delight you, and who you want to shine a light on.
Totally. Totally. There's so many of them. It's kind of, that has been one of the greatest gifts of starting Get in the Groove is I have met so many incredible women and made so many new friends, both online and offline. It's been great, and learn about what a lot of other people are doing, and how they're living their life in their maybe we call it the I don't know if it's the middle third or the last third. Let's hope it's the middle third.
Hi, I'm Jim McCann.
And I'm George Everly Jr.
During the COVID-19 epidemic, I stumbled upon an article that Dr. George wrote, which had a real strong impact on me in terms of how COVID was and was likely to impact our social connections, our relationships. And it really, really resonated with me. So I reached out to George, basically wrote him a fan letter, and that began our relationship.
We found a mutual interest in helping people become their best selves, especially in times of adversity.
Together, we embarked on a quest to co-write Lodestar. That journey began with countless hours of researching the most impactful self-help books out there.
Once we had our picks, we combined the science with the practical.
The result of our journey, the creation of a one-stop shop for the best of the best in self-help.
We decided to write this book to help others go from where they are to where they want to be and be the best possible selves they could be.
So if you're looking to boost your career, build stronger relationships, or simply become the best version of yourself, Lodestar is here to guide you on your path. I've become interested in the work of Deepak Chopra in the last year or two, and he talks about the 4 phases of life, and the last being from 75 to 100. The fourth phase, how it's all about giving back, and you're done with the growing up, you're done with having children and achieving career objectives, you're done with teaching, and now not ever done with teaching, but now you're moving on to enjoying your life, imparting your wisdom, taking advantage of the relationships you've built, forming new relationships intergenerational, and really making a difference while you're enjoying yourself. And it just seems like such a wise combination of Eastern and Western philosophy. So I've become interested in that, and it sounds like you've tapped into that with your community. Have any people who jump out at you who you've come to know from Get in the Groove that just live that life, role models that you've developed?
I don't know if
I know you're that for your community, but I'm sure there's others.
Yeah, I mean, I would say they're more people that you may not have heard of. I mean, they might be, an influencer who, was like, I don't know. There's a woman I met. I mean, like, again, these are people, but that she was a stylist at Nordstrom and a buyer, but she's created, she's become a very big influencer, and it's been a whole awakening for her in her life. She's got her daughter working for her. I mean, it's it's really great. So she sort of has been able to put together an amazing business, and also this idea of this reverse mentoring, she's really doing, which I think is so important for all of us to make sure that we have not lots, but at least some younger friends, in addition to our kids, but she's working with her kids, which I think is, really great. There are just so many women that are so passionate about helping other women. And I think that's really, what I get excited about. I mean, there's a lot of bigger names, and, somebody like Bobby Brown, who is in my demographic, who sold, her company and then left her company 20 some years later, about the same time that I sold One Kings Lane. And, after whatever, she had a waiting period, started a whole new company again. She also has her kids working with her, and, has built another great brand. I mean, I'm so inspired by, what she's done with Jones Road. It's fantastic.
Tell us about your kids.
Well, I have 3 kids. My youngest daughter is an investment banker at Goldman Sachs. My older daughter works for Uber in sales and marketing. And my son is a lawyer, litigator, partner at Latham & Watkins.
Well, one of the largest law firms in the world.
Yeah.
Your kids sound like they are all super successfare. Wow.
Yeah, and I think we've done a pretty good job. They're independent. They have their own insurance plans. They are in good shape. So yeah.
I happen to know that they think you did a pretty good job too. because
Yeah.
they've nominated you for our program here at the Flowers Company. It's called Amazing Moms, and
Oh,
I'm just loving what's going on with this program because we get to hear about people like you, and hear it from their children. They hear it from their spouse. They might hear it from a friend. It's just an amazing to get our community of folks saying, "Hey, here's someone I'd like to tell you about."
yeah,
And,
that's wonderful.
and amazing is a little bit elastic in terms of amazing in this respect or that respect or many respects. And we're just getting to hear such warm and wonderful stories. What do your kids think is pretty amazing about you?
They've been so supportive. I mean, I was always a working mom, but I think, that what I've built in terms of One Kings Lane, they were so supportive and I think really proud. And they were very excited to, sort of witness that firsthand, they had front row seats for that. So I think that was pretty exciting for them. And again, they've been so encouraging with Get in the Groove too. They think it's great. They're super supportive. I think it's really fun for them to see the kind of things that I'm doing that, at my age and whatever, and making it work.
You're
And
just a kid. What are you talking about?
I'm going to be 70 next year.
That's what I'm saying. You're just a kid. The best
Yeah.
30 years are just ahead.
I have to recalibrate. Yeah, my mom's 95. She just turned 95. So
Well, you're lucky. You come from a good gene pool.
I have good genes. Yeah, I definitely come from good genes.
When we get together again a year from now, how has Get in the Groove changed?
Yeah, I think what happens is it gets bigger and maybe we start offering some new type of content and information. So, it's interesting. When we started, we kind of threw out a pretty wide net and then we pulled it in pretty fast and focused on fashion and beauty. And I think now that we have a really, dedicated and engaged audience, I think they want more from us. So I think what starts to happen is, maybe we go back to adding a few things in, which is really how I built my business at One Kings Lane. I always knew in the beginning that we wanted to sell everything that went in and outside of a house. Obviously, you can't do that in the beginning. Yep. So, we started with just more decorative objects and then just added on. With Get in the Groove, I didn't necessarily follow that, but I realized that that was really the right way to do it quickly, which is why we pulled back in instead of doing lots of different stories and content and all that stuff. I think now we've built a big enough and strong enough platform that we can start to add in, maybe more home content, maybe, more about travel, which I'm very much into right now that we haven't really
Travel seems like the next logical extension of what you do.
Right. Yeah, totally. And, it's something that I'm doing in a big way and trying to get to as many of the places that are on my list as possible. So
probably adding some new names to that list as you go.
Yeah, it doesn't stop, right? I like to even go back to some of the places that I've been. So anyway, yeah, so I think travel is definitely, something. I think entertaining is another, pillar that we could certainly add into, whether it's cooking.
And the definition of entertaining, I think, needs to evolve too, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. You start maybe with cooking. That would be, just recipes or something like that, which we did. And when we first started, and we had a lot of fun. I have a friend a dear friend who is a fantastic cook. And together we would invite women to come over. We called it Lunch in the Groove. And we would make a great lunch and sit around and have a great conversation and then interview that person. So I think, that maybe that we go back.
That's exactly what I mean. I'm all in on being deliberate about cultivating a community of friends, acquaintances. We just had a wonderful breakfast this morning here in Midtown in New York City, and a friend who I haven't seen in probably a couple of years now is Oliver Chen. You might remember Oliver. He's the fashion and retail analyst, head of research at TD Cowen, and his insights. By the way, I've always look to him to tell me what's coming. He's been talking about the impact of AI on retail for at least 5 years that I know of. And some of the things he told me this morning just really knocked me out. And you were talking about department stores before. We were talking about the pending merger between Neiman Marcus and Saks Fifth Avenue. And what a small percentage, this is something you would know, but I was surprised. The small percentage of people who make up 40, 50, 60% of the sales of some of these luxury department store brands.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unbelievable concentration.
Yeah. Like it said 20% is 80% of the volume kind of
In
thing.
this case, 5% is, 60%, 50% of their sales.
But that same type of, theory. Yeah.
Disproportionate
But
scattering
I
that.
think, I think it's interesting. I mean, AI is obviously going to have a big effect on us. And I also just kind of wonder, when we talk about getting back together as people doing more in, IRL kind of events, will people want to start connecting more with people? It'll be interesting to see.
So you're in a business of connecting people, of curating people, curating ideas and fashion. How do you manage your social life? You're fortunate you have 3 terrific kids, 2 girls and a boy, all of them successful. You talked about you're still fortunate enough to have your mom at 95 years old. Are you deliberate about maintaining old relationships, allowing new people into your community, cultivating different kinds of groups? Is that something you think about?
No, friendships are really a very important thing right now. Really important, I think, at this part of our life. So I take great care in making sure that my old friends, that I'm in touch with them. And a lot of them, by the way, aren't in Los Angeles. So that takes a little bit of extra effort, when I go to New York or, making sure I talk to them on a regular basis. I think it's super important. I think it's important also to get rid of the people that you don't find to be additive in your life. I don't mean literally get rid of them, but you don't need to put a lot
That
of
would be a whole different program.
Yeah, exactly. But I think also, like for me, as an example, I've gotten very into playing golf, as an example. And so I've started to develop a whole new group of friends, which, I play golf with because actually my old friends not really into golf. So that's been sort of an interesting journey at this age to start to, make and cultivate new friendships. But it's fun. And it's really, I'm actually really enjoying it and finding it, very rewarding.
Yeah, I think too many of my contemporaries think, oh, at this age, I'm not making new friends. I already have my friends. And I have a person I'm extremely fond of who used to go to Florida. And I saw him for dinner a few months ago. And I said, you still go to that same place in Florida? He says, no, we sold the place. I said, oh, really? Why? He goes, all our friends died. And I was struck by that. And he said, no, really, one of the spouses would die. The other one would move back with the kids back north. He said it was just our circle had narrowed because we weren't down there often enough. So we relied on the same handful of couples that we were close with. And we hadn't invested in new friends. So I think there's a great lesson there. And I think the people who say, I already have all the friends I need, maybe they're very lucky and they have family and they're busy. But I think curating, as you said, some people, you're just not going to have the same amount of time for them because they're not interesting. They're not interested in you. And you just realize it's not accretive to your well-being.
Yeah, and it's so important as we get older that we do have those social interactions, that we are engaged with, people. And I think, making new friends and doing new things. And I think also we talked about this before, a few younger friends, that can help enlighten you on maybe things you're not aware of that are going on. I think that's super important. Also, I mean, I love that I have somebody that works for me who's, in her early 30s. And I love what she brings to the table because most of the time I have no idea what she's talking about, but I find out about it, I learn about it, which is great. And vice versa too. I think I've been additive to her world as well, which is great.
Susan, you mentioned before that you're quite sure that AI is going to change a lot of things as we understand them in our worlds and quite rapidly. How do you keep your thumb on the pulse of what's coming technologically, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, how the social world is being upended now? How do you stay on top of it?
I don't know. It's hard to stay on top of it, but what I think you have to do is you can't be afraid of it and you have to try it. You got to download the ChatGPT app and start playing around with it. There's some other ones that are out there. I can't remember the name. I've just heard Scott Galloway talking about one that he uses for writing. I just think you have to.
Perplexity.
Yeah, you have to, embrace what's happening and just try it and see how you can fit it into your life. And sometimes it might feel a little awkward or clunky, but I think if you stick with it, you start to figure it out. And I think it's kind of rewarding in a way when you do that. You just, this is it. I get it. Now I know why everybody's super excited about this. Or that's really cool that I can do this now, as opposed to saying, oh no, I'm not doing that. I'm not engaging with that. I'm not going to, try that. I think you have to embrace it. I don't know that you'll be on top of it, but I think you'll certainly know what's going on.
Another friend has a saying similar to yours about AI. His name is Shelley Palmer, and he's a really smart friend and has been on the AI kick for 2 decades. And he's just an in-demand consultant and speaker now because he just understands it. He just gets it. And he has a good look at what's coming around the corner. So a lot of us rely on him for that kind of help. But his comment he did in his Shelley Palmer blog post that he does daily, he wrote just a couple of weeks ago, the thing about AI is you can download ChatGPT, and if you don't know how to get started, ask it. You can ask it, how do I get started here, ChatGPT, how do I get started here? And he says he's asking questions. And the newest wrinkle he gave to me today was when you're interacting with any one of the LLMs, let's take ChatGPT 4, for example, he said, make sure you ask it, when you give it a query, ask it to ask you 20 questions that'll help them get clarification to the point that they think they're 95% correct in feeding back the answer that I need.
That's fantastic.
And it causes you to iterate. But I mean, the nice thing about this is, how do I learn about you? How do I learn how to use you? Am I doing this right? And it will teach you. His point is, get in the game. That's how you're going to learn.
That's right. I think that's it. I mean, it's funny because I had been using ChatGPT, and then my daughter said, "Oh yeah, I don't even use Google anymore. I downloaded the app," and I was like, "Oh, there's an." I just hadn't I didn't realize there was actually an app. I've been doing it on my computer, so okay, I'm downloading the app, and I'm going to start using it. Also. So I think you have to be a good listener too. I think that's part of. I think for so many things, but I think especially with technology, you have to listen and ask questions and not be embarrassed. Like just find somebody to explain it to you.
Now, how do you think the evolution of artificial intelligence and these LLMs will impact Get in the Groove this year?
This year? Well, I think that they've helped us already. They help us, do research. They're helping us write better, lines for our emails, what were the titles for our email. I mean, we're starting to use them already just to communicate better, to be honest. And I think they also are helping, like if I'm looking for something, a particular item, they just help me, they go out and find it and bring it back to me. So we are using it. I mean, it's out there in our email. MailChimp is our email provider, and it's all over that. We're starting to see it in the platform we use for our affiliate platform to help people shop better. So yeah, I think by the end of the year, you're going to see a lot more of it, and then just continue.
Looking at getinthegroove.com, it has a very, very specific aesthetic. That's yours?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is that something that you've evolved to with this business, or it's something that you came with?
I mean, I think the aesthetics is, we started with that. I think what has happened over time is originally you wouldn't have, if you had come to Get in the Groove in the very beginning, you wouldn't have seen a lot of me. Now you see probably too much of me. But that is what people responded to. So I just, gave into it. So it's a lot about my take on things, and it's how I see things and what I think about. So the aesthetic has become a little bit more about me, but just from the colors and the way it looks and how we photograph. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. We try.
And a lot of eyeglasses.
We sell a lot of eyeglasses. I mean, it is, until you get that cataract surgery, it's something that we all need a lot of. So, yeah. But I mean, that's been fun too. Just as an example, the company we work with a lot is Caddis. They make really great glasses. But when we first started, they first started. So it's been really fun to watch, them grow.
Growing alongside one another.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of this. Even when we started, nobody was talking about menopause. Now everybody's talking about menopause. It's sort of like a thing, which is great. So that's been really fun to see over the last few years. As
we have a friend here in New York who gave up her anchoring news career on a TV channel, Tamsin Fidel.
Yeah, Tamsin.
She's wonderful, and you remind me of one another. She has her own very definite style and aesthetic. She's terrific.
She's great. She's great.
She's doing well by doing good in terms of bringing all the good information about menopause and making something people are comfortable chatting about. I think she's helping a lot of women. I think the two of you are kindred spirits here.
Just talking about things makes a huge difference, right? She, you asked before, somebody who's inspired. She would definitely, fall into that list. And she's got a new documentary coming out about it, which I'm looking forward to seeing. So, there's something.
And if you want to know about Broadway, she's your go-to.
Oh, is that right?
So when you're coming to town, you want to know what show to go see? Go check out Tamsin Fidel. She's got the answers.
Okay, that's good to know. But
she has a nationally syndicated weekly show just on Broadway.
Oh, I didn't think maybe I did know that. Oh, good thank you for reminding me that.
So tell us what's next for Get in the Groove. What big new things do you have coming on the horizon?
I think just we're staying on course. We like what's happening. We like what we're doing. We're trying to do more of it, do it in a bigger way. I think one of the things, just even in talking to you, I've been thinking about it, but I feel like we need to start getting people back together. I think we did a lot of that before COVID. And
that's a natural extension for your community. Yeah, and it seems to me, just getting to know you a little bit today, that it comes pretty naturally to you, and that's something you can do for others.
Exactly. I think, when we used to do it, it was really magical. When you bring people together, women together, they're very excited and they love to talk to each other, learn from each other. And I feel like, that is something that we need to get back to, that we obviously, since COVID stopped and haven't really, started doing again. But I think it's time.
I think we're still discovering how damaging COVID was for socially, from a mental health perspective, and I think your community that you've gathered could benefit from your efforts about community building and information sharing that you do. And I think there's some great things in the future for you and your community, and I can't wait to watch it evolve and develop. And
we should do a 1-800-Flower dinner.
We'd love to do that. We do under one of our brands. We do monthly dinners under our Harry and David brand. We do Harry and David.
Be fun. We should do that.
Dinners in a month. I'd love to do it with your community. It's great fun, and we get to convene some wonderful groups of people. It's the thing I most enjoy doing.
We should totally do that. We could get a great group of. That's something that I used to do a lot before COVID. Bring different groups of women together at my home, and it's always really. It's a good thing.
Good. Well, Susan Feldman, so thanks so much for lending your time to us today, teaching us about what's going on and Get in the Groove, telling us about your career and your life. You're an inspiration to a lot of people, and I think I agree with your kids. You're a pretty amazing mom.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's been fun. I'm so glad we got a chance to meet. I look forward to having that dinner.
Me too. Harry and David, dinner of the month. Oh, we're going to Susan's house. Everyone get ready. Pack your bags. Thanks, Susan.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
We put our heart into everything we do. We are farmers, bakers, florists, and makers who grow and create with a passion. Made with love at every step of the way. Because at the end of the day, we know you're sending more than a gift. 1-800-Flowers, share with love.
Well, I hope you enjoyed what you heard, and I know I'll be sharing it forward. I hope you get to as well. Let's keep the conversation going. Follow me along on Twitter at Jim 1-800-Flowers and on LinkedIn at Jim McCann. Hope to talk to you soon.